This is why gaslighting by silence, the ultimate sin of omission, may be the most potent form of gaslighting there is. Because regardless of whether this silence is from the direct gaslighter or from others around the situation, there's nothing to see or hear. So in a way, we don't have anything to point to. Just an empty and despairing feeling in us. Have you ever had this happen in a narcissistic relationship? You try hard to communicate with them in a way that they might hear you. You might say, hey, hon, I would love it if we could meet my sister and her husband while they're in town. We missed them the last few times they've come, and they wanted to take us to that new restaurant downtown. I know you have some stuff to do Saturday and you've had a busy week, but this wouldn't be until the evening, okay? So you do the eggshell walking and the fluffing and the context setting and all of it. And then the narcissistic partner says, oh, come on. The thought of listening to your brother-in-law yammer on about his new business, and you barely even like your sister, and you know how hard I've been working, and I know you're going to make it about me and how I don't want to see them and I'm the bad guy. But you know what? It is selfish after the week I'm having to expect me to have dinner, blah, blah, blah. You know the deal. You can fill it in. And because fully cutting the trauma bonds and getting to radical acceptance is not easy, especially if there's lots of ties that bind you in this, you are hurt and it stings. And you hate that your life is so isolated, and you even think, damn, what am I doing in this relationship? It is not good for me. Then Friday rolls around, okay? And your narcissistic partner turns around to you and says, hey, babe, yeah, my week is settled down. It's good. Like the deal ended up working out. Let's do it. Let's get together with your sister. I know she means a lot to you, and I've been wanting to try that place. It'll be fun, right? Many people will just be happy about that. You might even think that this is the narcissistic person showing empathy, saying things like, I know she means a lot to you. You might even be elated. You might even get mad at yourself for second guessing your partner, or think you're being dramatic about even fantasizing about a life without being in this relationship, and think, see, narcissism, schmarcissism, my partner sees what matters to me. Well, the more this happens, the less happy it will make you. But for a long time, it becomes the rhythm of the relationship. The narcissistic people kind of come out with disappointment or just straight up shock and awe, showing you who's boss. And then once they establish that hierarchy yet another time, and you once again adjust to the disappointment, they'll pull back and say, okay, I'm so nice. You can have your way on this. As though they are doing you a favor when you are actually saying, hey, some decent people want to take you out to dinner and I care about them. But this example, this particular back and forth, which can just be about everyday stuff. I've talked about this idea of the perpetrator-rescuer dynamic. You may not think that, well, those words, perpetrator, that feels so severe. But this stuff wears you down. You get accustomed to the cycles of disappointment and redemption. And it's not just disappointment. Sometimes the thing that they're saying, we can't do this, or I am going to do this, or I'm canceling this, will throw you into a panic. And you start wasting resources to solve the problem and the issue that is being raised. Just to have them say that, oh, that's no longer a thing. So you pop in and out of panic all the time in one of these relationships too, which is definitely not good for your health. This is a very, very difficult way to co-parent with someone because while you as an adult may be able to ride the wave of disappointment and after enough time may realize that they will always come around, but you have to white knuckle everything in your life and keep people on ice or plans on ice until the last minute. This is hard enough for an adult. But for a child who is always having to wonder until the last minute if things will work out, it is an unsafe, perilous, and uncomfortable experience. And it can be hard as the other parent to navigate your children through it and not end up trying to almost normalize it. Now, narcissistic parents will do this to their kids. And if you had a narcissistic parent, you know exactly what I mean. The parent may say no or give you the cold shoulder or the silent treatment and then come around. And a kid doesn't have the same capacities as an adult, and they also have many more vulnerabilities. So the child may feel so grateful that their parent agreed or did the thing at the last minute. And this can really firm up that trauma bond for kids. In fact, this parent that keeps them hanging and then comes through can often feel more heroic than the parent who predictably follows through and doesn't use this tactic with them, which can be heartbreaking if you're the consistently protective parent. I've shared the analogy that author Rebecca Humphreys has talked about so many times, the narcissistic relationship as someone who you meet and then the sensation of getting to know them it's like being whisked to the top of a 100-story building. And it's exciting and the view is beautiful. And just as you're settling into their arms, they push you off. And in the terror of falling, you finally see what this really was until they catch you just as you're about to hit the ground. Your seducer becomes your perpetrator, becomes your rescuer. And that means you're attached to a very dangerous, confusing, slippery creature. And you find yourself not only forever vigilant, but also self-blaming. Now, the dynamic this video about is different. It is about you voicing a need or a want or an idea, having it shut down, being shamed about it. You may be feeling guilty, being made to feel guilty or angry or even thinking, this relationship is not good or this person is not cool, this isn't safe. And then that person does an about face and says, actually, I will do this for you. So they get to portray themselves as a kind, accommodating person. And for most of us, right, we just want the thing we wanted to work out. And we're also invested in retaining the attachment and all that cognitive dissonance stuff and, sort of not feeling that tense state all the time. Well, most folks don't point out that pattern of like, well, why were you so terrible to me when I brought it up in the first place? We don't bring that up. We're just glad it worked out. Now, narcissistic relationships are not about communication or sharing or growing. They are about tactics and survival. So every decision by you has to be calculated. And this happens after radical acceptance, where you are actually informed by what this personality is. And before you get it, you may just be learning to hold back more and more and blaming yourself. Narcissistic relationships are about waiting for the good moments, right? So when they come, because the narcissistic person sort of imperiously agrees to what you want and then makes it about them being such a nice, accommodating person, you're probably not going to question the dynamic or how mean they were when they originally said no. You just grabbed the win to maybe just get something that you needed. Narcissistic relationships work because we push down the abuses and hold on to the normal feelings moments. And we try to just pretend that those normal feelings moments are most of the moments. Now, this can be even worse when it is not about getting something, but about not losing something. So here's an example of that. The narcissistic person tells you that no, you guys, we won't be taking the vacation you had planned for months, or maybe they'll say to you like, no, the kids can't do the after school program. I don't want to spend that kind of money. Or, yeah, you know what? We're going to end up moving. Yeah, we're going to move out of this town. No, I know you made all these relationships here, but nah, this other place will work out better. Or the narcissistic boss says that you will not be getting the extra support that was going to be needed to finish up a project. So you're being told that something you were expecting or that you already had will be taken away from you without much explanation. You aren't asking for anything. It's something you had and boom. Now, most people, when this happens to us, will have a reaction. Protest, sadness, anger, and that will be shut down. The usual BS of being told you're being selfish, don't you understand? You should understand why this is. And again, You may question this relationship as a result. Or you may even wonder if you're the one who's selfish, that whole cascade. But then after you have sat in the grief and the loss, they turn around and say, you know what? It's okay. We'll take the trip. Or I figured out how to move around the money to make the after-school program work. Or, you know what? Fine. We don't have to move. Or, hey, everyone, I took the time this weekend to figure out how you can get that support to finish the project. Am I the guy or am I the guy? Once they tell you the lost thing isn't actually lost, the narcissistic person will expect validation and thanks and being told, oh, you're so great, thank you so much. Well, the tension in you is whether this is your hero or that this whole tension didn't need to happen in the first place. You may have already told children, the children that were going to be affected, for example, that things aren't happening and already had to wipe away their tears and manage their disappointment, or those of your colleagues. You may have girded yourself for the disappointment. And so when the good news comes, the relief that comes over you will look and feel like approval and praise, showing thanks and gratitude, rather than seeing this as the toxic pattern it is. This roller coaster of disappointment and then feeling as though the narcissistic person is making everything all right and is your hero, over time takes a tremendous toll on you. This isn't about a one-time disappointment that turns around, folks. Do not generalize this from one event. This isn't a game. This is an ongoing repeated pattern that chronically positions the narcissistic person who actually was manipulating the game to show up, to end up as the hero and savior. But you have to look at both sides of the story. The abusive or invalidating or manipulative piece, you may be glad the outcome ended up okay, but the ride was unnecessary and the wear and tear on you is real. And if you can't or don't want to leave the relationship, at least you can see it realistically. Lift the self-blame and recognize it as not being a healthy pattern, creating plan Bs, not communicating the losses to others too early, and not celebrating the wins because they aren't. They are artificial drama created by the narcissistic person to keep holding their position of power and keep posturing as a hero and show you who's boss. Allows them to stay as the savior and the dominator. You can't call them out on their game, but you can see it for what it is. And hold back on any of those big shows of gratitude. At a minimum, it'll help you feel more whole inside. This cycle that I'm talking about may not be the big traumatizing cycles of violence we often see, and that often show up in a similar way in relationships. But these small sort of thefts that accumulate over time, these smaller cuts, can do just as much harm over time, with the added burden that it is often very difficult for people in these situations to get support. Because the people looking at you will say, well, you ended up getting what you wanted, so what are you complaining about? But having to live in that back and forth universe of living in a life where disappointment is always being dangled, it is a very difficult way to live. So here's a question. Is love words or is love behavior? Is love a feeling? Or is it how you or someone else shows up with another person? Is love a sensation in your body? Or is love someone listening to you and really hearing you? And if you haven't stopped to think about it, you may want to. Because this goes well beyond narcissistic relationships, though it is a massive problem in these relationships. I have witnessed countless times people will say, I love him, I love her, I love them. And my next question, whether I'm in my role as a therapist or a friend, I will always ask this question, which is, what is it about them that you love? It's a quick hack for me to start unearthing whether or not this is a trauma bond. When I get a loosey-goosey answer like, I love them, I love them, they may go a step further and say, well, I love them. We've been married for 25 years. Of course I love her. It's my mom. I love him. He's my brother. But that still didn't answer my initial question. Telling me you love someone because someone is your husband or your mother, that just tells me the nature of the relationship. It still doesn't tell me what it is you love about them. It doesn't get to the qualitative stuff of love. So if someone tells you they loved you, is time served enough? I love them. Well, they're 85. She's my mom. Or we've been married for 40 years. What does that mean? Does that mean that you're stuck and you have to put up with their behavior no matter what? Does that mean you endure abusive behavior? Does that mean you don't ever get to expect that even small fundamental needs will get met in the relationship? So let me teach you a little bit about this by giving you some situations and scenarios. Right, okay? Oh, I know. I said I'd find a job by now, and I know you're paying all the bills, but we love each other. Isn't that all that matters? Here's another one. I know Mom always criticizes you and your kids, and I know Mom doesn't always see everything you do, but we're family, and we love each other. Can't you just ignore her? And here's another. Oh, God, come on, that text means nothing. It's just stupid shit I did when you were out of town that one time, and I was drinking. She's nothing. I love you. Isn't that what counts? Here's another. Come on now, who cares if I don't drive the kids to school? It's not a big deal, babe. I love you, and you love me, and that's all we need. We don't need to talk about this. How about this one? Oh, I forgot you asked me that. Oh, come on, stop being so mad at me. I didn't hear it. So then you say, but you never listened to me. So that's why all these things are falling between the cracks. And they say, oh, come on, let it go. All right, sometimes I don't hear you. Come on, I love you. Can you stop focusing on these little things? Like, God, I love you, right? Sit with those for a minute. Because in each of those scenarios, and these happen all the time with some variations, and I hear them every single week now for decades in my practice, there's something interesting happening. A person, usually then oftentimes a toxic narcissistic person, consistently does things that are unkind, hurtful, unseeing, unempathic, selfish, or all of the above in their relationship. Again, maybe they're narcissistic, maybe they're not. For our purposes right now, in a way, that part doesn't matter. And instead of addressing the issue when you try to talk about it, whether it's criticism or financial irresponsibility or betrayal or not helping with household duties or the kids or something, or not listening, they just say, oh, come on, that's not important. I love you, or we love each other. That's more than enough, right? Actually, no, it's not enough. The love stuff is great for a poem or an opera or a movie or a play, but it's not enough in real life. In fact, one of the tough parts of healing from intimate narcissistic relationships or trauma-bonded cycles is learning to enter or be in or be comfortable in relationships that may not feel that metaphysical or chemical, which usually is just familiar toxic cycles we feel like we can work through, and entering into relationships that are with good people who listen, who empathize, where it feels balanced and safe. And no, it won't be perfect. No relationship's perfect. But we feel heard. And we don't always feel hypervigilant or on high alert. A very big mistake that a lot of people do make is that they interpret that hypervigilance feeling and assume it's sparks. It's actually more likely to be your sympathetic nervous system sizzling and trying to warn you. Now, the good person that you might meet, where it's balanced and safe, may not be so much the sparks as an unfamiliar but warm, comfortable feeling. And without the chaos, it can be misread as friend zone. But this idea of we love each other, that's a gaslight, folks. It's a denial of your experience. Yes, them holding up their financial or household responsibilities or being there or not betraying you, it's real. Just because they love you doesn't mean that those things aren't difficult, nor are they acceptable. And this magical idea that I love you will make it all go away and make it better, it's nonsense. Narcissistic people weaponize that phrase all the time. It's even more toxic when they hit with the "we love each other," because then you're being pulled into their whole toxic narrative. You're also being put on your back foot, having to defend that, yes, sure, yeah, I love you, but that's not what the conversation is here. We need to get this irresponsible money thing worked out. So now you're being taken down a perilous path of having to engage in love talk, when in fact the problem is with the damn taxes or the credit card bill that need to get paid. Or when your trust is ruptured by an infidelity, having to wonder if love is bigger and mightier than betrayal may block you from processes such as grief that are an essential part of working through healing, even whether you stay or not stay after that betrayal. Listen, I used to say that I'm a cynic when it comes to love, but I'm beginning to realize that's not accurate. I'm actually a realist. And folks, I'm well into my 6th decade, so I've seen enough long love and family stories play out. It's not the loved up couples who tout their love story on social media. I love my baby so much. I have the best wifey. My soulmate baby heart BS. Those are not healthy and thriving couples. I am not just talking about longevity, folks. There are lots of relationships out there that last many decades that are a hot mess. It's not the grand gesture couples who say, I love you all the time. It's the people who listen. It's the balanced and symmetric relationships. It's the respectful partners and family members who make amends and change when they do make mistakes, and we do it right back for them, and they show up. And don't use stuff like, but we love each other, or as long as we have love, we're okay. Nonsense. Love isn't enough. And maybe once you heal from toxic relationships and family systems, you recognize that love is not just a feeling or a throwaway phrase, but rather it is the committed, empathic, compassionate, unselfish being there. Whether that's being fiscally responsible to lighten the load of a partner or family member, or emptying the dishwasher after your partner had a tough day, or showing grace or even offering some assistance to a family member who may not be able to show up to a family event because of medical issues, or listening and really hearing someone when they talk to you. Maybe those things are love. And if that is the case, then the entitlement, selfishness, lack of empathy, impulsivity, and manipulation of the narcissistic relationship would mean that the so-called love in that relationship is a love that may be more obligation, love in name only, love when it's convenient, love because we're told, of course I love them, I'm married to them, and can get someone out of a tough spot. I love you. Isn't that enough? Maybe it's not. Let's talk about a different kind of gaslighting that we don't talk about enough. We often think gaslighting is active. It's the things that people say and do, telling us that we're wrong, telling us that we're crazy, telling us we're too emotional, telling us that things didn't happen, moving things around, manipulating the environment. And it often is, and it can be. But to only view it that way misses one of the most lethal forms of gaslighting, which is when people say or do nothing, or what we can call gaslighting by silence. Now, this is most classically experienced when people go through a trauma, especially in childhood, and the child is not protected, or worse yet, the child says something about harm that was done to them and nothing is done. Initially, the gaslighting may be the suggestion that the trauma couldn't have happened, or the child is exaggerating, or that the child shouldn't say such things. But after that, even the child did this most courageous thing, then it's silence, nothing is said. And the child is now living in a world not just of fear and loss of trust and all the other fallout of trauma. They were not protected. and everyone around them is now saying and doing nothing. The silence, frankly, is the most abusive thing that can happen. It's an absolute negation of the child's experience. Now, we can put this in adulthood. A person has something bad to them. They take it to whatever authority they take it to. Law enforcement, a court system, human resource department, and nothing is done, nothing is said. This can happen in a relationship where people around you may witness the cruelties that are happening in your relationship, and nothing is done, and nothing is said. This happens on historical and sociological levels, human rights crises, genocides, oppressive governments. Nothing is done, nothing is said. Obviously, the nothing being done and nothing being said is a trauma and a re-trauma, but it is also gaslighting. It's a denial of experience that literally leaves the other person feeling insane. Now remember what the core of gaslighting is. It's a denial of experience, a denial of perception, of memory. And then it's the fostering the sense that there is something wrong with the person being gaslighted, and a repetition of this cycle until we doubt ourselves. Someone not acknowledging what is happening is a denial of experience. Someone leaving you to twist in the wind when you're clearly struggling without noticing you or protecting you or responding to you or empathizing you or reaching out to you or helping you, leaves us feeling as though we're the problem, we're misreading the situation, and then allows us to keep feeling as though we're the problem. That ultimately culminates in us feeling absolutely crazy and doubting everything about ourselves and our lives. Folks, that's gaslighting, and that's emotional abuse. When silent gaslighting happens, we may find ourselves getting more dysregulated. Perhaps we are the ones now raising our voices, saying things like, how can nobody not see what is going on here? Like, what is wrong with you? Etc., etc. And if that happens, the system then doubles down, looking at us sideways as though we are unhinged. And the silent gaslighting then multiplies itself within ourselves. A sort of simple but not particularly harmful example of this occurred for me years ago when a terrible thing had happened in the city where I was living that had affected everyone. I was a student at the time, and the university was even closed for a few days. And we were studying psychology, for heaven's sake. And I remember that the terrible thing happened, the city was still reeling. And I remember the teacher just coming into the classroom and saying, okay, so let's just pick up with the reading from last week. And I remember thinking, what the hell? There was no checking in to see if people were okay, or if people's families were okay, or maybe saying, maybe we should talk about what's happening. It was as though nothing happened. She just started in. And I remember looking around at other faces in the room, and mercifully, a couple of other people did have their eyes wide open and had strange expressions on their faces that left me knowing that I wasn't the only one who found this odd. But had those faces, had no one else in that room, because some people didn't have a change in expression, I literally felt like I'd lost my mind. I wondered, well, maybe what happened wasn't that big a deal. It actually was, and it changed the city I lived in rather permanent ways. But I was left feeling off by that experience. That's what gaslighting does. But when nothing is said, she didn't really say anything, it can almost be harder to register it. However, always remember, when it comes to silent gaslighting, just one person taking note, even changing expression, validating us, or bearing witness is all we often need to feel a little more sane. When we are struggling or going through something, and especially if anyone is aware and then nobody says anything, even though the people around us may not be the direct causers of the pain, but rather maybe enablers or people who just want to keep the status quo, we feel like we're out of our minds. Because the first thing we do is wonder, it must be me. Because nobody is noticing or saying anything or addressing it. It's all about the emperor's clothes, right? It's like one night a member of your family just stops coming home, and nobody says anything about their absence, even when you point it out. This is why gaslighting by silence, the ultimate sin of omission, may be the most potent form of gaslighting there is. Because regardless of whether this silence is from the direct gaslighter or from others around the situation, there's nothing to see or hear. So in a way, we don't have anything to point to, just an empty and despairing feeling in us. And we quickly pivot to, like, it's me. I'm misreading this. I'm being dramatic. I'm being ridiculous. I'm making too big a deal of this. I need to get over this. But at some level, we also know that silence is just going to be met with more silence. You know, there is the concept of the stiff upper lip that sadly is often glorified, a sort of stoicism that we praise. Like, everything went wrong in her life and she never missed a day of work. Or, his entire world fell apart and he never raised his voice. He never shed a tear. She never complained. We glorify this shit. And then that stiff upper lip BS is extended to others. This comes up again and again in traumatizing systems, especially family systems, where something bad happens to someone and the response of the family can be a cold indifference, with a sort of accusing eye cast at the person who was harmed and an implicit but unspoken sense of, how dare you react? How dare you have emotion? How dare you disrupt everything? Toughen up. Don't make so much noise. What did you expect? But it's not said. There is a sort of contemptuous dismissal all held in that silence. And then over time, people in these systems learn a helplessness, that there is no point in saying anything. And if the emotional abuse or other traumas persist, the person going through it collapses. They doubt themselves, they doubt reality, and then everyone can point the finger at the person who is harmed as though they're the one who's the problem. Look, they collapsed. Rather than seeing that it is the system that is sick. Nobel laureate, scholar, and survivor of the Holocaust, Elie Wiesel, is oft quoted as saying, neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. And it is exactly this that has happened to so many survivors of traumatizing or antagonistic, narcissistic, and emotionally abusive relationships. The whole "it takes two to tango," communication takes two, I don't want to take sides mentality that the world has toward people who are in these relationships. When one person who's just trying to attach or love someone is being harmed, and the person also who's harming them has little empathy or respect, it's the gaslighted silence from the world, sometimes from the gaslighter or the antagonistic person, allows the behavior to persist. And also goes a step further. It doesn't just embolden the gaslighter. It leaves the other person in the relationship feeling destabilized and foolish, and worst of all, as though that they are somehow at fault or complicit. And this attempt to be neutral and silent allows gaslighting to persist. Another example of this shows up in narcissistic and antagonistic, emotionally abusive relationships where you may be sad, or maybe you're just going through a hard time in your life or struggling, and you're met with silence or indifference. In many narcissistic relationships, and it doesn't matter which kind, parent to child, partner to partner, family member to family member, boss or colleagues to others in the workplace, you have feelings, you have experiences, and there's simply no recognition. And the expectation that no matter what you're going through, that dinner will be on the table, the trains will run on time, that pathological selfishness of the narcissistic person at the center, and others only being noticed if it benefits the narcissistic person or brings them supply. But that experience of not being noticed at times of pain, again, I register that as a form of gaslighting. And frankly, it's a sort of existential gaslighting. You exist as a human being, an emotional being, a living being in the world, but you are never attuned to, seen, validated, protected, or cared for. It could be argued that from everything from the level of the individual relationship and from the world at large, that the silent gaslighting may in some ways be the most harmful. There is no conversation to record, no evidence to find in an old email. There's no thing to point out. There's just the abyss. And if you were to ask for people to see what's happening, there's nothing to see. And if you were to point out to the silent gaslighters what is happening, you will be asked questions like, well, what do you want from me? Leaving you having to be the one to give people a set of instructions on how to attune to you, care for you, see you. First of all, we shouldn't have to do that. But when we are harmed or sad, we sure as hell don't have the bandwidth for that, nor should we. And most people don't feel they have the right or are shamed for asking so much when they're in these relationships. Then we feel crazy and the beat goes on. Silent gaslighting is insidious and it does so much harm. It steals trust, it creates fear around relationships, and it fuels self-doubt in ourselves, in our emotions, all of it. Toxic relationships do not have to be noisy to hurt us. But there's a form of gaslighting that a lot of people sometimes miss, and they even miss it as gaslighting and wonder why it's leaving them so off balance. One form of gaslighting is being told that you're incompetent and can't do stuff. And if that has ever happened to you, that somebody's just told you things you know you can do, and they tell you you can't, drop that in the comments, because you may not have recognized, because that's not the reality. You know how to do this thing. But telling you that you're incompetent is a denial of reality. It's gaslighting. If it's happened to you, drop it in the comments and let's talk about it. Narcissistic relationships are spaces where we feel deeply insecure. There's no getting away from that. Over time, the longer the amount of time we're in these relationships, we doubt our judgment more and more. We don't believe we know how to say the right thing, do the right thing, be the right thing. Our confidence erodes in these relationships over time. Many people at the beginning of these relationships, we're not all shrinking violets. Really strong people get into these relationships. They're very confident people who are at the top of their game. But once the narcissist was done with them, they were shells of themselves, riddled with self-doubt, lost confidence, lost self-esteem, and confusion. When we talk about gaslighting, we often focus on the simple examples of them denying reality. Your reality, all reality. They deny you said what you said, did what you did, feel what you feel. And then they top that off by telling you that you're stupid or crazy. It's something that happens over and over again, a slow grooming process and indoctrination. And before long, you stop believing in yourself and are completely under the sway of the gaslighter. As a result of this, lots of people hold themselves back in life. They hold themselves back from opportunities in education, in jobs, and just life and love in general. Because we frame gaslighting as the experience of having reality denied, we miss an important form of gaslighting that really harms people. And it is a denial of reality, but in a different way. The narcissist tells you that you are not able to do stuff. What stuff? Any stuff. You don't know how to drive there. You don't know how to cook that. You don't write well enough to go to graduate school. You're not able to travel alone. You won't be able to take care of a dog. You aren't capable of running your own business. Do you really think that you're going to be able to work and raise kids? I don't think you're going to qualify to get a loan to buy a property. Time and time again, it is a doubting of your competence. Over and over again, they tell you that you are not capable. It is a denial of reality, especially if you actually know how to do the thing that they are accusing you of. The initial feelings and reactions to this are often hurt. And if you react, you say, yes, I do. I know how to cook, or I write really well, or I've driven in all kinds of places, or I grew up with pets, or I used to run a business, whatever. Then they will gaslight you more. They'll say, oh, okay, stop being so sensitive, or stop being so arrogant. You have a very high-headed sense of what you can do. Or then they go with, I think you're being crazy with how intense you're being. Yeesh. I was just trying to give you some constructive feedback and protect you, and you go crazy on me. So there's no having these conversations, because now, after having that conversation, not only are you incompetent, now they're calling you insane. What's unfortunate is that early in these relationships, people may perceive that the narcissist is being solicitous. Oh, you don't know how to drive in that big city or so far. And then the rationalization is, oh, they just don't want something bad to happen to me on that long drive, or they just want to take care of me. Or when they say, well, you're not going to be able to cook all of that for all those people. Oh, they're just protecting me. They don't want me to exhaust myself having to cook for their family. Part of why gaslighting works is that it is a grooming process that happens early and takes place alongside love bombing or familiarity. People often want it to work out with a new person, or they want to believe that even a familiar person like their parent has their best interests at heart. We, as people, want to trust, and sadly, after a narcissistic relationship, that is a hard horse to get back on again. But over time, after being told we can't, or we shouldn't, or we won't be able to, if you hear that enough, you do start doubting yourself without the gaslighter or the narcissist even having to doubt you out loud. You believe it. And that is the gaslighting working. You stop taking chances. You stop suggesting new things. You hold yourself back. You turn inward. You live less fully. And then the narcissist wins because you are living under their control. Ironically, and this is often the tragic final act of these relationships, after you have been told so repeatedly that you can't do anything and that you are incompetent and you even stop trying, the narcissistic person may then start getting bored with you or behaving as though you are not interesting. This isn't a bad thing. If they head out, it's kind of a good thing. And you can right away start trying things again and taking your life back. But sadly, some people view that as an abandonment when the narcissist leaves them. A healthy relationship is one in which growth is encouraged, in which taking chances is encouraged, in which trying new things is encouraged. Because healthy people aren't threatened by their partners and they want them to succeed. So when you say you want to go to graduate school later in life, they encourage it. Or you want to start selling your delicious pies, they applaud you for it, may even help you with it. It's what a relationship is supposed to look like. Telling you that you can't do the things that you are able to do is an insidious form of gaslighting. It doubts the reality of your competence and over time erodes whatever sense of competence you had in the first place. The first time someone suggests you can't do something or shouldn't do something, don't get into a fight, but instead say, interesting suggestion. And if you don't mind, I need to get to that cabinet because I'm going to go ahead and start cooking the dinner, or taking the drive, or taking the class. Clipping people's wings is a daily practice for narcissistic people. It's a way of keeping us stuck alongside them and takes away the threat that we could run away from them. But please do not allow anyone, narcissistic or not, to erode your sense of what you can do or what you can attempt. If you are coming out of a narcissistic relationship, one of the most important things you can do is to start picking up on the things you were told you can't do. So go ahead and host that dinner party, take that long road trip, get that puppy, start looking into running that business, turn that gaslight off by being competent. If you are still stuck in the narcissistic relationship, do that silent act of rebellion technique I have talked about. Work silently toward a goal. But don't share it with the narcissist, or they will invalidate it or dismantle it before you even get to start it. I don't know, look into taking that online class. Make a meal for friends when the narcissist is not home. Get the part-time volunteer position while the children are at school. Just do it quietly. It's meant to be a way to remind yourself of your incompetence. Of the many losses that narcissists have inflicted on the world, one of the greatest is reflected in the lost potential of human beings who have been stuck in these relationships and never really got to enact all the things they could do. I think of the novels we haven't read, the scientists whose work we didn't get to see, the performers who never performed, the food we didn't eat, the music we didn't hear. Because a narcissist stole that belief in their abilities or possibility from them. One of the most powerful paths of healing is to take yourself back and mentally tell them to go F themselves by doing